Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. How to overcome self doubt. Well, let's face it, can we really overcome it completely? I would say that we can get really close. And here's the point: you want to be able to overcome self doubt enough that you are not holding yourself hostage by not speaking up. That's my wish for you. That's exactly what happened to me in the past. I was so afraid of speaking up in certain situations because I didn't trust myself, or I felt like I better not rock the boat. I better not say anything. I might be judged. And at the end of the day, we all just want to be accepted for who we are. We want to feel comfortable. And yet there are a lot of environments in which we don't know if we're safe. We don't feel safe. And one of the things I want to recommend is that you create the internal structure that's needed for you to be able to have the confidence to speak up in any situation. So for today, I've got some exercises to help you with how to overcome self-doubt. So the first thing I want to share is back when I was in a performing group. I was on stage in Tucson, Arizona, and this was back in the 90s. On stage, Tucson, I had sadly accepted and grieved, and I was okay with it, but it was a sad accepting reality that I wasn't chosen for any of the lead singing or speaking parts, or excuse me, singing or singing. Let's try this again. I wasn't chosen for any singing or dancing parts. And that was unfortunate. But I had accepted it. I was still having a great time. I was in a performing group with 100 other people. And we were all sitting on the risers. It was during the staging process where you learn the choreography and all of the things. And the director was looking through his notes and he said, "Oh, shoot, we have this extra speaking part." He was hesitating and he said, "We have this speaking part. Who wants to do this speaking part?" And everything in me was, I want to do it. But I didn't say that out loud. I hesitated. And wouldn't you know it, the girl next to me raised her hand and she had that speaking part for the entire year that I traveled in that performing group. And I can remember multiple times thinking, there she is again. She's doing it, and I am not. So I missed that opportunity. I do not want you to miss any more opportunities. And you might not even know if you're missing opportunities. Some of you might be listening to this thinking, "Oh, I'm just fine." And maybe you are. There is no judgment on my part. But others of you might be listening to this thinking, "Oh, yeah, I relate to that. Something similar happened to me." Or I didn't raise my hand when I wasn't 100% qualified for something, as opposed to raising your hand and saying, "I'm going to give it a go and see what happens." I mean, the truth is you have nothing to lose. So let's start with some exercises that can be helpful. And one of them is simply doing an affirmation. Now, I know there's lots of feelings on affirmations. Should we do them or do they really work? There is enough research from a scientific perspective related to the brain that shows that when you speak things, they tend to move you toward whatever it is that you're speaking out loud. So, for example, what you do is come up with a phrase that really resonates with you. Like maybe it's something like, "I am a powerful presenter," or "I am a confident communicator." Or it could be something like, "I am totally and 100% qualified to do the job that I'm going after." Whatever it is, it needs to evoke some emotion within you. You want to feel like, "Oh, yes, this resonates. I want that." And you don't have to believe that you have that yet. That's the great thing about affirmations. The point is, you're speaking life over yourself. You're speaking positivity. You're speaking possibility. So what you want to do is figure out what that is. And first of all, don't overthink it. Just find something that sounds good to you and say it every day, multiple times a day. And I would highly recommend that you put this on Post-it notes all over your house, or at least in a few places that you can see it regularly. The other thing with affirmations, make sure they are short. You don't want to have this long, drawn out sentence. You've got to have them be memorable. So you want to find simple phrases that you can use. I would also recommend that you pick one. Don't have multiple affirmations. Pick one and say it over yourself for a few weeks. And the story that I often tell, which was when I really realized, okay, these things actually work, was many years ago when I was thinking, what would really make me feel even more powerful? And I decided I was going to say, I am radiant. Well, believe it or not, first of all, can you agree that that is a word that most people don't use in regular communication? We don't use it that often. That's why what I'm about to tell you is what made me go, oh my gosh, this totally works. So after a corporate training, somebody actually called me radiant in the written feedback that they gave me, a corporate training session. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, so fascinating that they use the word radiant. And then about a week later, someone else in my life said, you're so radiant. And I thought, wow, this is crazy. And if you start experimenting with these, you will see, first of all, you're going to feel optimistic and feel positive when you say these things because they are life-giving words. And when you say those things over and over, you start believing them. And that's really where we want to get to, where you start embodying them. When you can embody them to the point where you feel like it's actually true, then you're going to walk with more confidence. You're simply going to show up differently. You won't have the same doubt that you've had in the past. Now, all the things that I'm talking about require intentionality. You can't just say it once and that's it. These things take work. Overcoming something like self-doubt, that's a huge thing that happens to the best of us. And it's been part of you for a long time. So you can't expect it to turn around overnight. So I definitely want to make sure we're all on the same page with that. The other exercise that I recommend related to self-doubt is something called a fear script. And this is where you say whatever fear says to you. So maybe it's, oh, I'm too scared to speak up at this meeting. Well, you write that down and you actually create a script. You can write fear and then say what fear says. I'm too afraid to speak up at this meeting. And then you speak back to that fear. So it might be something like, in my script, I might say, so first under fear, it's, I'm afraid to speak up at the meeting, or I'm too afraid to speak up at this meeting. And then I might say something back like, it's okay, fear. I know you're afraid, but I'm going to make it okay because I have tools within me to speak up. I know how to do it, so I don't need to be afraid. And then fear might come back and say something like, yeah, but I'm still scared. What will people think of you? Then you could write back, well, I don't know what they're going to think of me, but the truth is that's none of my business. So it could go back and forth like that. The beauty of this is not getting the words perfectly right. There is no right or wrong in this. The beauty in it is the reflection time through the writing and the insights that come as a result of doing this. That's really the key component here. All right. The other exercise is one of my favorites, and this relates to this message of self-doubt that we say to ourselves regularly. And the story goes, this is a real story. It's not just the story goes. This is a story that was personally me that was part of it. This exercise comes from a dear friend of mine named Rachel Grant, and she is a neuroscience expert, sexual abuse recovery coach, and founder of the Beyond Surviving Method for Healing Trauma. She's an amazing person. She had this workshop that she was running, and I thought, oh, why don't I go? That sounds fun. I'd love to see what she's doing in real life. So I came. It was about 15 of us women. And imagine this, 15 women sitting in a circle And she has us reflect on the strongest message of self doubt that we say to ourselves. And I honestly don't remember exactly what mine was, but mine is usually something around I'm not good enough. And she had each of us go around and share that message. So it was things like, I'm not good enough. Who am I to be getting a promotion? I'm not smart. I am a failure. And those messages all went around. And you can imagine the room felt pretty heavy. So she acknowledged that. And she said, do you feel the energy in the room right now? And everybody went, yeah, we do. So then she had us go around the room and this time say our same message of self doubt, but sing it like a Broadway musical, or at least say it in a different way. So can you imagine? Well, I'll just tell you, it was so different. First of all, we all went around the room, things like, who am I to be getting this promotion? I am not good enough. Either way, it sounds so crazy. And we all laughed. The whole energy in the room shifted. We were laughing, having a great time. And here's the point related from a neuroscience perspective, what you're doing when you do that is you're tricking your brain. You're changing up the neural pathways. And it says suddenly now to your brain, oh, that's different. That message does not have to carry the same heavy energy. So it's fascinating how this works. And doing that, in fact, I was speaking at in a clubhouse room, the social media app where you just hear people's voices and you're in rooms that have different topics. So I was speaking in my own room that day, and a woman said, "Oh my gosh, I just put myself on silent, and in the car, I yelled and laughed at this message." And she said, "Oh my gosh, her self-doubt message." So basically she did the exercise right then and there, putting herself on mute. And then she goes, "It totally works. I'm laughing hysterically now." So it shifts the meaning and that can be helpful. It doesn't mean that it's going to solve the problem 100%. So please hear me when I say these are all exercises for you to experiment with. So again, today we have talked about affirmations and the power of those. We have talked about doing a fear script, and we have talked related to this Broadway musical message of self-doubt. I want to leave you with one last exercise that's also a really good one. This one is also a fun one. Name your inner critic. We all have an inner critic. And sometimes it feels like that's ourselves. So the point of why I want to bring this up is because it will help you to look at that that critic almost as if it's external, like it's a different person. So my inner critic, her name is Gertrude. She has long gray hair, but she always puts it really tight up in a bun. And she has these cat eye glasses that are halfway down the rim of her nose. And she has a clipboard in front of her, and she's always judging me, saying, "Oh, didn't do that right. Oh, didn't do that right." So what you can do then when you create this character type for your critic, then you can actually almost start talking to them as an inner critic, and not in an insane kind of way here, folks, but talking to them saying, "Oh, Gertrude, just relax. It doesn't have to be perfect. And isn't that great?" So this can be another idea for you to incorporate into your repertoire. I would recommend you think about which one of these exercises resonates most for you and start with that. Start with something. But if you start with at least one thing, that is going to help you to progress. And growth doesn't happen in tremendous amounts or percentages on a daily basis, but you got to do something. 1% every day can make a huge difference. So give some of these things a try and let me know how it goes. And if you're interested in more work around this, first of all, please feel free to reach out to me because I do offer occasional one-on-one coaching packages. And the other thing that I do is I speak on this topic. So that's my main way of making a living, which is to speak in front of audiences. And if you know anybody that's looking for a speaker, for women in particular, to overcome self-doubt and speak up with confidence. I would love to be your speaker. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And remember to stand out with unshakable confidence. And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.